it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Beyond the 4 dimensions that man is aware of, there lies a mysterious fifth. It is a realm that is as big in size as the universe itself, and as timeless as eternity. It rests between the depths of a man's worries and the pinnacle of his knowledge, and is the nexus between light and gloom, science and superstition. 2 best friends spend the night in a semi-truck. They almost died. By Mr. Shish Macabre. "Stogie?" I asked my army buddy CeeLo upon offering him a fresh cigar. The 2 of us were chilling in the roomy cab of my 18-wheel semi-truck. We spent the last 6 hours that day bowling, shooting pool, go-karting, playing miniature golf, and just driving like speed demons in his old folk Buick with the bass on the radio turned way up. We just finished eating dinner. By that I mean some gourmet-fashioned pork chops cooked in an air fryer inside a trucker's gas station. The damn outlet in my truck was shut. Thank God the gas station clerk was sympathetic to our plight. Now that all the fun and food was gone, I settled down in my driver's chair, he in the passenger's, and we began winding down. "Hey, Coronis," he said in his near-perfect impression of the old classic Looney Tune character Yosemite Sam. This guy was a vocal genius. He could impersonate almost any cartoon character flawlessly after hearing them just once. He also loved cigars. He told me he'd been practicing on beef and pretzel sticks, pretending to puff on them, or on the occasional young pine cone as a child, until he was old enough to upgrade to the real thing. This guy could always make me laugh and always had my back no matter what. We first met and worked together back in 2018 in a distribution center back in our family state in the Midwest. I had the know-how and he had the energy. In our respective short time there, we were the best duo the management had. Any job they put us on, we'd finish it, even if it was after hours and everyone else had gone home. Best word to describe our partnership: dependable. We've been fast friends since. We've become like the brother we never had but always wanted. He thought in particular of me. "Hey, bring your cutter? I can't find mine," I asked him. "Certainly." Now he was talking in his classical Curly Howard voice from the Three Stooges. In a flash, he whipped out his cigar head cutter and proceeded to remove the head tips from both cigars. Next, he quick-drawed his ever-trusty Statue of Liberty Zippo lighter and performed the lighting ceremony. "Thanks, Coca-Cola Jones," he said. "Anytime, Texas Toast." He used a mock southern twang as he spoke, and we both laughed. These were our preferred nicknames for one another. As we sat back enjoying the flaming Honduras rolled tobacco leaves, we talked about our respective professions. CeeLo had enlisted in the army nearly 2 years ago. His last job adventure nearly bankrupted him, so he did the only thing available to him at the time. He walked into the nearest recruitment office and basically said, "Where do I sign?" I've been trucking for nearly the same time myself. When he'd announced his decision, I was both surprised but supportive. I'd once been in the Navy in my late teens. These days I'm seriously considering becoming an Army or Navy contractor, transporting military-specified goods and material in my own semi, at least until I've saved enough to manage a thriving trucking company of my own. CeeLo had been given a 4-year and some weeks changed term of enlistment, an additional 4 in the reserve. His duty station was Fort Bragg, North Carolina. His job required an impressive level of security clearance. He toyed back and forth with the idea of re-enlisting, but since the death of his estranged brother, he'd made up his mind. Being the only surviving male child, he'd return back to our home state and take care of his elderly parents for the remainder of their lives. And after that, he'd agreed to come live down south with me in the future home that my own brother was preparing. Never saw much of each other these days, for obvious reasons. The life of a full-time trucker and full-time soldier, very chaotic and unpredictable. But whenever I was in his general area, would be on a 36-hour reset. He'd have the weekend off with no extra duties or prepping for a field exercise. We'd arrange for a meetup. We always had to cram whatever fun activities we could into our limited time off. But thankfully, we had simple, economic tastes. We have quite the bucket list to start checking off once he retires from the service and I have my own business. Yeah, I hope Cola Jones becomes my right-hand man in that endeavor. Well, time will tell. Some dipshit for brains cut me off today. They saw me signaling to get over into the right lane to make the next exit. What do? Step on the gas and fly past me, nearly causing me to lose control. I have to swerve the wheel enough so I don't crash. Lay down on the horn and flip the prick off. One or both of us could have been killed because of that. Yeah, God knows how many more in the back of you. Right. The assholes on the road all seem to be out to kill me. Not in a collision, then by giving me a heart attack from these near misses. You need me as your armed wingman. I could unload on any of them with an M4 from the arms room. Maybe tactically acquire an M320 40mm grenade launcher. I'll lean out the window and poof the shit out of the bastards. Oh, please. We bumped fists and continued smoking. My phone was playing one of my current favorite country songs. That was a very important thing that we loved, country music. I'd recently started writing song lyrics, posting them online to see what lone artist or band would buy. I've had success with one so far. CeeLo offered to sing the lyrics to the next one for free. He does have a good singing voice, so I told him maybe. The sun was starting to disappear behind the tops of the trees. As it did, CeeLo opened the passenger door. He said he had to drain the valve, his euphemism for taking a leak. He hopped down and walked a little ways into the tree line. The traffic flow was moderate where I'd parked the truck, but it was enough that he had to keep hidden while doing his business. I watched him till I couldn't see his form. I went back to my music and started to sing along. I found myself glued to watching the sunset. Within minutes, the glowing orb vanished. A few minutes later, CeeLo returned. He had a perplexed look on his face. Hey, what up, bro? Could have bet my bi-monthly pay stub. I heard what sounded like a low-tone chittering noise. It was really eerie. Then I caught a whiff of what smelled like sulfur, I think. As quickly as they came, they were gone. Interesting. Well, your brain screwed with you before. It make believing you hearing noises or distorting real ones. Hey, my brain only distorts noises made from human beings, not of nature. Oh, well, I'm well aware of that too. Hey, next time it'll be your turn. Then when the sound and smell are invading every orifice of your body, you'll be so overwhelmed you'll collapse unconscious. I won't be the one to drag you back up in here. Well, he finished with a comedic That made me laugh hard enough to make the tears well up in my eyes. Everybody, including me, thinks he should at least be a part-time stand-up comedian. He said he's keeping all his options open for voice acting, stand-up, audiobook narration, stuntman and so on. I think he'd be terrific at all of them. After we'd finished our cigars, we got ready for bed. CeeLo hopped up on the upper partner's driver's bunk and I crawled into the lower one. He didn't bother waiting for me to put down the ladder for him, so he nearly missed the mattress and fell backwards onto the floor. Besides being insanely energetic, he's almost one of the most wiry, flexible people I knew. He corrected himself in a second and succeeded on the next attempt. Good night, Coca-Cola Jones. Night, Texas Toast. I laughed again and switched off the lights. Within a minute, we too were off to dreamland. After all his time in the army, CeeLo could fall asleep at the drop of a hat virtually anywhere. All those cold nights having to sleep out on the hard frost-covered ground on numerous field exercises made him able to drop off dreamlessly within minutes. With being forced to wake up at any moment for some tactical maneuver, he was a very light sleeper too. Any sudden noise or vibration, even a strange aroma, could bring him back to reality immediately. So when his nose caught a whiff of some potent, faint aroma, he was wide awake. lost in confusion as to what the smell was and where it was coming from. Then his memory kicked in, and he recalled his experience in the woods just a few hours before. Hey bro, he said in a hushed voice to his trucker brother down below. The only response he got was his friend's low, deep snores. He slowly lowered himself down to the floor and reached for what he hoped was my shoulder. Before he touched me, though, I heard it. That same inhuman chittering sound. Just like before, but it sounded much closer now. As he peeled his ears to listen better, he realized that all the usual light noises he'd heard even before the sunset were gone. Not even a frog was talking now. This realization chilled him to the very core. Something was very, very wrong here. Hey Tex, wake up man, wake up. CeeLo shook my shoulder until at last I woke up. Groggily, I turned over to face him. What the hell, man? Shh. Be quiet. Take a whiff and listen. Utterly confused, but sensing the strange urgency in my friend's voice, I did what I was told. Then I understood. The noise coming from outside the truck was unlike anything I'd heard before. It made me think of someone wearing ice skates and shuffling on the surface of the ice. The blades would make a shh sound. This was sped up dramatically. Then the smell hit me like a brick wall. Oh, hell, it was sulfur, all right. I felt my stomach lurch. I had to suppress a gag. CeeLo was holding his nose. Told you, didn't I? Yeah, sorry I doubted you. What the fuck is that? CeeLo turned to face the front of the cab. He slowly approached the dash. Cautiously looked out the windshield. The moon was covered by a thick cloud cover, so his visibility was greatly limited. He contemplated grabbing his key flashlight, but thought now wasn't the time. He then looked out of the passenger window and scanned the woodline. He could just make out the shapes between the trees. He couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Don't see anything, he whispered. I was just about to say something, but stopped before the words even crossed my lips. The chittering was closer now. So close, in fact, I could feel it in my gut, not just in my head. CeeLo's eyes grew extra wide now. It's clear he felt it too. The only other sound resonating inside the cab was the blood pulsing madly in our temples. Then, a new sound. But this was a familiar one. The oncoming sound of a semi. It's coming from the rear of the truck's large empty trailer. Then we could see the approaching glow of the thing's headlights. On it came until it slowly passed our cab and pulled into the empty lot right in front. Well, this one had no trailer, just the engine. It stopped a good 40 or so feet in front of us. The engine roared in park and then shut off. Well, I'd finally got up from my bunk and stooped shoulder to shoulder with CeeLo. We said nothing, just stared and waited. A few minutes more, the driver stepped out of the cab. He was an older guy with glasses, possibly mid-50s. He was clean-shaven and wore a brown parka that he had zipped up. He had blue jeans on and white sneakers. Removing his baseball hat to scratch his balding head, he then put it back on, reached into his pocket, pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit one. After returning the pack, he walked around the front of his truck and disappeared from view. How the hell does he not hear or smell that shit? CeeLo asked, flabbergasted. Wait a minute. I think the noise and stench are gone. CeeLo paused. Sure enough, I was right. The chittering and sulfuric smell were simply gone, as if they'd never been there. We looked at each other. We both must be losing our shit out here tonight, CeeLo said in his normal voice. His face showed such relief, and I found myself chuckling. Yeah, right. We both chalked it up to some bizarre after effect from those damn Honduras cigars. Possibly the pork chops as well. I drew the cab's sleeping curtain, and we both crawled back into our bunks. "Well, let's try this again, shall we?" CeeLo joked. "Right. Well, this time I'm tuning my ears and nose to the aft position." "Me too. Good night, Coca-Cola Jones." "You too, brave little Texas toaster." I laughed. We went back to sleep. Not long after, the smell and chittering were back in full force. There was also a different sound coming from outside, like a muffled scuffling. It was coming from the direction of the other trucker's vehicle. CeeLo dropped down and drew back the curtain. I was pulling my shirt up to cover my nose and mouth. The moon had returned and lit everything up magnificently. Then we looked out the windshield and watched in horrified shock. The other truck's cab was rocking back and forth violently. Then we could make out muffled screams of fear and gurgled cries of agony. This continued for at least 10 seconds, and then everything went silent and still. The next sound that came to our ears was a subtle ripping and squelching. Then the driver's door burst open. Something stepped out into the moonlight. "God in heaven," I said. "What the fuck?" CeeLo responded. Our voices were crippled by near hysteria. The thing that stepped out of the new trucker's cab was neither human nor animal. It was an abomination of which nightmares were made of. The thing was completely naked. Its skin was more pale than the moon above it. It had 4 arms that were as long as my legs. Speaking of which, it had none, nor hips either. The thing used its extra arms as legs. Each hand was as big as a catcher's mitts, and all had 8 digits, all of which ended in foot-long, needle-sharp claws. The rest of the body was skeletal. The ribs and clavicle were clearly visible through the skin. The head was large, so much so that it didn't seem possible that such an emaciated frame could support it. There was no hair on its head, just like the rest of it. The skin too was stretched to the point of tearing. It had 2 diamond-shaped eyes that were bulging out of the sockets. They looked like 2 cue balls. No iris or coloration in them whatsoever. It had what may have been a nose. Just a small black hole in the center of its face. It had similar, slightly larger holes on the sides where its ears should have been. The mouth was large, made the most hideous excuse of a smile. With its main 2 arms, it heaved the shredded, dismembered corpse of the driver out of the driver's side door onto the ground in front of it. CeeLo and I could do nothing but watch in shaking terror as the thing positioned itself over the man and opened its jaw, much like a snake. Clamped down over the man's throat, reared its head back so hard that the man's head came away and bounced once on the ground and rolled over twice before the agony-stricken glazed eyes would turn to look up directly at us 2 young men frozen with fear inside our truck. I stifled a gasp. CeeLo's breathing hitched in shock. The creature swallowed what was left of the man's throat and turned around, much like a spider, till it was positioned over the dead man's stomach. Snake jaw open, it bit down again, tore out the entrails and all the other organs with childish glee. CeeLo was sure that the thing was giggling while it gorged. Once it had finished the last of the corpse's insides, it stuck out a tongue about a yard long and began licking itself clean. "What do we do?" CeeLo said in a trembling voice. His whole body was trembling. Hell, so was mine. We were stuck. We couldn't start the truck and attempt to drive away or run the thing over without it coming for us first. Neither of us had any weapon to speak of. CeeLo's Buick was parked all the way behind the trailer. The thing would be on us in an instant, surely, if we attempted to make a run for it. The idea of trying to scare the thing off once the semi's massive engine roared to life seemed ridiculous. Just keep quiet, and it'll go away eventually. As soon as it's gone, we'll make a run for it, I said, with a bravery I did not feel. No one will believe us if we tell them. You know that, right? Yeah, man. We'll cross that bridge soon enough. Let's just stay inside. We'll wait. After the hellspawn had finished its tongue bath, crawled off the body and over to the head, flung the baseball bat hat away, bent down and scooped up the head with its massive jaw, turned its own head left and right, and finally looked right in our direction. Vision was blackening with panic. Cilo's heart was beating so fast, he was sure the thing would burst in his chest. It was dead, colorless, bulging white spheres stared right into our eyes. It felt more to Cilo like it was looking right through them. I was almost convinced the creature knew we were looking at it. It would come for us next. But in that instant, it scurried off into the woodline with the speed only arachnids could have formed. And the sudden motion was so unexpected that we gasped on impulse. We watched it till it disappeared into the darkness of the woods. Now's our chance. Let's get the fuck out of here, Cilo said, desperation evident in his voice. Yeah, but you want to take my truck or your car? Your truck. Come on, man, get it started. Okay. I jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine. Cilo took out his Gerber and readied the small knife blade. He'd also brought a small can of self-defense mace spray. He gave it to me. And lastly, he lifted up my bunk and rummaged around underneath till he found what he was looking for. 1.5 foot long rounded rubber baton. It was what I used to check the truck's tire pressure. He held on to it. Well, these things weren't much, but they were better than nothing. Cilo jumped into his own seat. The truck was almost ready. Put it into gear, and it nearly released the air brakes. That familiar, overpowering aroma returned. He started coughing and gagging immediately. Cilo looked out the window to try and see where it was. There was nothing there. Neither through the windshield or my window. The chittering was back too. So loud this time it was painful. It was coming from what must have been the trailer. No, underneath it. The next instant, a loud thud on glass rang through the cab's interior. We both looked up and saw the thing's massive clawed hands pressing hard against the driver's side window. The hideous face soon followed. Its cue-ball eyes stared at us with ravenous glee. It must have been ecstatic to now have 2 more victims for a late-night snack. Its eyes never left our wide, terror-stricken ones, now tearing up from coughing violently due to the palpable stench. Its chittering was rising to the point of chaos. It began lowering its left hand, reaching for the door handle. I couldn't remember locking them. In an explosive act of desperate panic, Cilo drew the rubber baton back and swung it with every fiber of strength into the window. It shattered on impact. Most of the glass embedded itself into the creature's face and eyes. It fell back away from the cab, emitting a howl of pain even more loud and hideous than the chittering sound. It covered its face with 2 of its hands as black trickles of blood began to flow. The god-awful stench was gone almost immediately. Now, Cilo yelled. Without missing a beat, I released the brakes and stomped on the gas pedal. The truck lunged forward. Thank God the trailer was empty. Tires caught traction, then we were zooming down the dark 2-lane road as fast as a given semi could while hauling an empty trailer. Cilo, careful to avoid the remaining broken window, looked out behind to see if it was following us. He saw just the trailer and the road falling behind. I don't see it. I think we're clear now. Before I could reply, a clawed hand thrust itself through the broken glass and began swiping the air. CeeLo narrowly avoided the demonic talons by panic jumping right into me. This action caused me to swerve too hard to the left. The truck narrowly lost control and would have been tipped over had I been a less experienced driver. Thankfully, I was a veteran of the trucking world by this point. I auto-corrected just in time and the truck continued to stay upright on the road. Fortunately, the beast was still there. It had pulled itself up and now thrust its huge head inside the cab. "Move," I hollered to CeeLo. CeeLo immediately moved aside. "Take this, fucker," I screamed. I pointed the mace spray in the thing's cut and bleeding face and shot 5 streams of mace at it, while the beast went berserk with fresh, burning agony. The squeals of pain were even worse than those of slaughtered pigs. It withdrew its head from the passenger window frame to again hold its face with one of its hands. The squeals rose to a pitch that made our ears ring. Going half crazy from the noise and enraged terror, CeeLo lunged forward and jammed the Gerber knife all the way into the thing's grotesque hand while still gripping the window frame. The thing let go and fell onto the road, taking the multi-tool with it. We felt a slight bump from the trailer's back tires, which was followed by a soft, crunching noise. "Hey, is it dead?" I asked, not slowing down for a moment. CeeLo looked out the window once more. On the road, he was sure he saw the pulverized mess of the creature. A large pool of coal-colored blood formed around it. Well, that's all, folks. Whenever Coca-Cola Jones quotes Porky Pig, I know the world is safe once more. It's been 6 years since that night. We're still as close as ever. I think even closer. After all, had either of us been by ourselves out there, that thing would have eaten us. We saved each other that night. Well, his term of enlistment ended 2 years ago. He's moved in with his parents to give them the proper care they need. He does occasional stand-up, a bit of novel narration and voice acting. He's dabbling in everything right now. His full-time job that pays the bills is as a custodian at the local hospital. He's content with his simplistic life. If the army had taught him anything, it's to make the most of any circumstance. I started building my business in earnest now. I've assured him I could always find a place for his energetic comedic genius in this venture, and he's most grateful for that. We still see each other whenever he's passing through. We do much of the same stuff we've always loved doing together. There's one thing that we'll never do again. Neither when we're together or by ourselves. We'll never sleep overnight in a truck or car near the woods ever again. Well, we know I finished that thing off with my truck. We never heard any reports about his body being found. We did hear of the old man, though. Evidently, a state trooper was passing by where we'd parked that night and saw the carnage. They didn't go into details as to the state the body was found in, naturally. His name was Walter Pendle, a fellow native of our state. He was survived by a wife of 25 years, 3 kids and 8 grandkids. Reports say he was going to retire in just another 3 years. We never told anybody what really happened that night, for obvious reasons. We never even talked about it with each other. We just wanted it all to go away. The image of that thing, its sounds, its smell are all seared into our memories. This will haunt us forever. I still feel occasional guilt about what happened to Walter. I'm sure my friend does too. How could we have known? I wonder if his head was ever found. I'm sure that hellspawn had a collection from past victims. The Four-Armed Creeper was the name we've attached to that monster. Here's what the 2 of us know for sure about it. It hunts at night. He uses the chittering sound and the sulfuric smell to incapacitate its prey, and takes sadistic pleasure in the kill. Here's what we don't know and hope we never find out. Was there a media cover-up regarding the beast's discovery? Or did something else come along and clean up the mess? Another like it? Or something worse? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.